Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, Change the Conversation. An unedited and honest conversation to create the future. My name is Arjan Visser. I'm your host and futurist, and join me as I chat with my friend Adam Fleming on self leadership, future, and peers. Adam is a ICF certified international coach who really loves to work with leaders who want to have an impact for the next 7 generations, 400 years. So, Adam, we can't ignore
Hello.
that one. So, how are you and what are you doing with 7 generations when we talk about leadership?
Well, I think 7 generations is just a good length of time to forget who you are. So when I start talking about legacy and things like using the word legacy, I'm not talking about putting your name on a building.
Yeah.
I'm talking about putting your core values into action in such a way that people want to carry them on for
Mm,
generations.
yes.
Yeah.
7 generations. Well, you're an international coach. So you have probably many references to answer my questions, but actually the deepest question I have is, as a coach,
Mhm.
how do you experience coaching yourself when we talk about self leadership?
Well, yeah. So I've been coaching since 2007, and that's an interesting question. How does self leadership work, or how does a person who is a self leader work alone or with a coach? And I would say at a base level, I understand coaching to be a creative thinking partner, not someone who tells you what to do.
Mm,
So there are many coaches around the world who are really what I would call mentors and or consultants, and they tell people what they should do next. And that's not when I'm doing self leadership. That's not the kind of coach I'm looking for. So I'm looking for someone who will come alongside me and have a creative conversation and help me open up possibilities that I hadn't thought of before. And it's sort of the idea, Aryan, of iron sharpens iron.
yeah.
So if iron sharpens iron, iron doesn't get any sharper by if you have an iron sword, for example, by waving it around in the air. Air doesn't sharpen iron. So,
Yep.
so if I want to be self-led, I need someone who can come alongside without an agenda for me. So I still hold the agenda, which means that I'm leading myself, but they sharpen me in some way. So when I think of self leadership, I think that coaching is a fantastic thing to engage, not because someone has something more to tell me or that they have some wisdom that I'm somehow going to grasp like they're a guru,
Mm,
but that I do have everything that I need within myself. But when I have someone sharpen me as well, it's this we grow in community, right? We grow in relationship. We don't grow by going to the if we could just go to the public library and acquire more knowledge from books, then it would be the most popular place in town. So
I think you've just killed many birds with one stone, or maybe even holy cows.
yeah,
A
right,
coach is not a mentor.
right.
It's that creative thinking partner that comes alongside, which makes me think like there is that mutuality, there is that equal relationship, not top down, not bottom up. It is
Right.
actually much more like a peer and a friend
Yes.
asking you the sometimes uncomfortable questions that you try to skip.
Yes, definitely can be uncomfortable questions and challenge someone who will challenge you. And if it's particularly if someone is leading quite a lot of people, or even just three or four, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter what the scale
Mm,
is. It's very easy to be leading people who don't want to challenge you, who don't want to ask you tough questions, or
yeah.
um, say, it looks like we're heading in the wrong direction. And so that's the opposite of a good coach is in another way. So one opposite is someone who tells you what to do. The other opposite is someone who refuses to challenge you at all.
Yeah.
And the yes man kind of concept, that doesn't help you lead. That doesn't sharpen your iron either.
Yeah. That's again, that's so important. Like what comes to mind is so many leaders out there. Um and by leaders, I always say, I mean everyone, if you don't lead yourself, you still have impact and influence on those around you. So
Yeah,
it's better to lead yourself, but it could be lonely, and you don't need people to just um, you call them the yes sayers. That's not helpful for personal development growth. That actually probably will magnify character traits that actually you're not proud of with hindsight. So yeah, I like that one. um, so how do you do that in your own life? Like, how do you make sure that you always are surrounded by, I would say, peers, but also coaches? Like, coach sounds formal, peers like sound informal in that setting, but how do you apply that in your own life?
yeah, that's interesting. An interesting question about what's the difference between a coach and a peer, and how do I apply it in my own life? Um, well, in my own life, I have a coach for the things I'm doing as a writer. I have a coach for the things that I'm doing as a spiritual leader, and I have a coach for sort of general conversations. That I guess that coach, probably the third one over the last 2 or 3 years, has helped me, has done a lot of good work in challenging me on my money mindset.
Mm,
So writing, spiritual leadership, and money mindset, and between the three of those, they're challenging me pretty much in any area that I need, as a creative person, as a spiritual person, as a business leader, financial business owner, um, getting some of each of those things that I really need if I'm going to grow. So I think probably another key for people who are thinking about self leadership is really a matter of having a growth mindset. And I don't really care for that phrase because it's probably getting overused and turned into a buzzword. But um, but for lack of a better term, growth mindset means finding people to help you sharpen each of those things. And if you stop having your growth mindset, you're probably going to stop having those people around you. And then when it comes to peers, I think maybe how I might differentiate that, and this is just off the top of my head, Aryan,
mm.
but my wife always gently and teasingly accuses me of starting businesses with all my friends. So
Yeah.
we have a mutual friend, Aryan, you and I, whose name is Timothy Morgan, and I'm writing co-authoring a book with him. Which is similar to starting a business together. Obviously, if the book
Yeah.
generates revenue, then we'll split that. So that's basically starting a business. And this is what my wife teasingly accuses me of doing all the time is when I find, and so I would think of that as a peer, someone that I consider maybe has some different skills and abilities and gifts to bring to the table, to that we can dovetail what I can bring and what they can bring, so that we can build something together. And certainly, you need those peers to help you also um, be the best that you can be. And you're not wanting to be the person in the partnership who's bringing the smaller piece of pie.
Mm,
So you have this drive to excel, for the benefit of yourself and your peers. So I think of peers, maybe the best way to think of that is those who I have partnered with in some way to co-write a book, to start a new small business enterprise of some kind. So I have a peer in Portugal now. We're starting uh, company to lead people on the Camino de Santiago in Portugal and Spain, and he's also a leadership coach and has been working as a coach even longer than I have. And we both have a passion um, for the Camino as a way to think through someone's legacy and someone's 7 generation impact. And we don't agree on everything, but we see eye to eye on the tactics. And I think that's a really interesting place to start. I've been reading Adam Grant's book called The Originals, and he talks a lot about how tactics, if you see eye to eye on tactics about how to get something done, then you can have a good partnership. So those are some thoughts about peers.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to chew on. You mentioned so much that I just have to pick one question. But I like what I'm buying myself some time. I like it that actually you talked about peers on the scale from friends to business partners, where there is an eye to eye on the tactics, which is definitely a step higher up than the operational, the doing, the tasks. And at the same time, that leaves a lot of space on the visionary level to be complementary to each other, and not
Right.
be a yes sayer for each other in that space.
Yeah.
So I just zoom on that one. Actually, that's the one you didn't mention. Sorry, I zoom on that one. The future perspective. For my personal story, but also the leaders I speak, a lot of them, when they do a little bit of soul digging, then they say, my biggest discontent is actually that I lack clarity. I lack clarity about who am I becoming, where am I going, what is
Yeah.
the real reason. How do you experience those things, and did it help in your life to actually pay attention to that process of what's next?
Well, yes, I've definitely experienced those lack of clarity issues, and I think that's what I'm talking about with the Camino de Santiago is the tactic of taking an entire month to
Yeah.
do nothing but walk all day, and um, it just we're in such a fast-paced society now that the amount of meetings that are on my schedule today, for example, are just such a fast pace that it's very easy to get sucked into what we're doing now so
Mhm.
much that we don't set aside any time to think about where we want to go.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Peter and I both are agreed on the tactic of just, if you want to crack that somehow, break through that question of what's my ideal future, taking that 14 to 30 days to walk, just being in nature, not even needing to get anywhere. By the end of the day, you will arrive, but it's not an urgency when you begin. Is an amazingly fruitful and useful thing to do.
I think it's that famous book. I don't know his first name. Kane was his last name. Thinking fast, thinking slow, or the other way around. That there's so much value in thinking slow or slowing down your thinking. That actually gives you a mindful experience, because you start to connect deeper questions, deeper perspectives, than just what's in front of your mind, of your thinking. 14 days or 30 days, that's quite an investment, isn't it, to set aside?
It's not very much in terms of 7 generations.
I
In
like that
terms of the time that will go by in the next 7 generations, it's a pretty short amount of time, I think.
I
It's a
think
matter
that
of
that
perfection.
is not just a small thing you say.
Mm,
Like the amount of requests I receive, can you help us with strategy? Get strategy back on top of mind,
mhm.
and then the expectation. Like they know there could be a 6 month project, but then you say, well, we can fast track a lot of things, not shortcut, but fast track a lot of things, and with creative thinking and tools,
Yeah,
we can make it like 4 days, and then you have done more than half a year and enough for the next year. And that sounds like, oh, it's 4 days instead of 6 months. And then the typical reaction is, can we start with a half day?
yeah, right.
That's
Yeah,
not time, that's priority, like you say, like 30
yeah,
days is a priority when you
right,
project it on 7 generations.
right. Yeah, it's not about how much. Yes, that's a good way to put it. It's not about how much time that took. It's about how much you prioritized it.
Yeah, it's a really good investment in that say, because the return is has a huge multiplier.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's something that's extremely humanizing about it, because if you walk alongside people that you come to the Camino from all walks of life, and so the first time that I did it, I met someone who ran a fish restaurant in Germany, and someone who was a retired CFO from Ireland, and um, people who are in the legal profession in Portugal and Brazil, and you just you're meeting people from all over the place, and you begin to realize that in this life we are all peers. None of us are better or worse than any of the others, and we can all be friends in that sense. And you have this you find this camaraderie between people whose lives are very different, but
Yeah.
you're all working at the same objective, which is to walk. So it becomes very simple.
Yeah. Well, Adam, you know, I get lost in my own thinking. So you've deposited a lot of gemstones to
Mm,
explore. Uh, Not only for me, definitely for those out there. And I just want to thank you for your time.
yeah,
Um, I will definitely invite you to come around another time. And for those who are out there, those leaders that heard things that connect with, yeah, actually I have that discontent, I have that need for clarity. I can only say that's not just an optional need. That is really you. That's the inside. So pay attention, prioritize yourself, leadership, and the development that goes hand in hand with it. So I definitely invite you to reach out, connect. The link is in the screen, but for those who are listening to the podcast, it's businessrevivalists.com/coach. And let's have a short chat about what it could mean for you to actually take serious that sense of urgency or discontent that you have. So looking forward to connect. Adam, thanks again, and talk to you soon. Bye.
bye.